What up, everybody? Svend here. Going to be tying up, I'm calling it the Svend's Leech, but this is just a Marabou Leech. Jack Gartside is the one that has tied something closest to this and palmering up the Marabou. I'm going to be doing it a little bit different, but a guy sent me a photo and said, hey, can you make something like this? And I said, I'll give it a shot. So I'm going to be starting, I'm going to put a stealth hook in the vise. I'm going to start with a number 10, and this is their nymph hook. I'm going to put a tungsten bead on it and go ahead and get that in almost till the point's all the way in the vise so I don't stab myself. But I want it to get down quick, so I'm going to wrap it with 8 to 10 wraps. I'm just going to start it on there and work my way up towards the bead. And I'm going to try and get a clean break. Let's back it up there and get a clean break right there and shove it up in the bead. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm using today, I've been really digging nano silk as always. This is a 6/0, and I'm going to go ahead and just leave that tag end of my lead up and start my thread behind there and give it about 5 to 8 securing wraps. And then I'm going to pinch off the lead using my thread, and then 45 degrees up and down to create kind of a base, and then go ahead and seal up that lead with a bunch of wraps. And we're not going to see it, so it doesn't need to be super pretty. Cut out my tag end, and we're good to go. Now for the tail, I'm going to be using some Marabou. This is white dyed olive, and I'm going to leave this tail longer than I normally do. But as you can see, I just grab a feather off of there, start preening them back, and figure out about the length. I want it to be from about a little bit, not quite 1.5 the shank, but like 1.27934 times the shank. And I'll tie that in and work my way back with a few looser wraps, and then really kind of crank down, and then going to cut it off where it butts into the lead so that it creates an even body. And I'll just clean this up now and give it a good couple cranks and work my way back to the tail, and that looks awesome. So you can see it's really long, longer than I normally do, but let's add some flash. I'm just got 2 strands of it looks line, but it looks mirage too when it's not in a clump. And I'm just going to pinch wrap it in on my side of the shank, and then do my flying V up and over and go back. If you are sparse on materials, I can usually do this technique and get 2 to 3 leeches out of the 2 strands, but I usually just cut it and call it good. Now I just pull them back, and I want the flash to be just a bit longer than the tips, and so once all the Marabou came out of that, it's the length I want it. So that looks pretty good for my tail section. Now this is where it's going to be different. I'm going to create a dubbing loop, and I'm just going to leave it about, you can't see it, but it's about 5 inches, and I'll secure that in so that the loop's at the back. There, you still can't see it. I'm in too far, but I'm using my Stonefo dubbing tool, which I love, so I'll just set the thread in there and then let it hang. Now the picture, this is going to be an burnt orange, I think was the color, so I don't want my thread being white, so I'm just going to use a Sharpie, color it darker than the orange to add some dimension and contrast, but you really won't see it. So for the body, I'm going to use the Simperfly ice dub in this, I think it's peacock color, and we're going to just be dubbing it on the thread. And I grab clumps. It's a fine line between grabbing too little and too much, and I'm going to probably demonstrate the pros and cons of each, because I just grab a little bit, dub it on, and that was kind of a perfect amount. That really, you can see, dubbed nice. I leave it a little bit loose, but in all my leeches and buggers, I laid down some super glue gel, just a little layer across the whole body, a little bit heavier up towards the bead. And this gives me about 3 to maybe 3 minutes to get this body secure, and it gives me a little bit of time to work with. And so I'll go ahead and cover up that tail and start working my way up. and you can see it's not perfect. Buggers and leechers are supposed to be a little bit more buggy and loose stray fibers, but my concern is the keeping it secure and durable, so that it can catch, not just one or two fishes, or catch a short strike and be done, but rather it will, you'll be sharpening this hook multiple times, and pass it along to your kids and their grandkids and their kids. And I don't think it will go that far, but most likely I'll give it to somebody on the river that I meet, or I'll fish it and put it in one of my boxes and forget about it. No, I'll use it. But anyway, so continue dubbing. No, I can't even speak. Just make sure, I got a little bit too much dubbing there, ice dub, and so it didn't really go how I liked it, but I'll clean that up. And continue all the way back to the bead, and I'm going to leave my thread right there. Looks pretty good. Now for the Marabou, I'm using this premium Bugaboo by Nature Spirit, and I like it. It just, these are really cool looking feathers, and it's the perfect length for what I'm doing. And so I've got this clip here. I think it's from the Magic Tool kit. I don't know where I got this, but I'm just going to pinch half the feather. I've tied a bunch of these, and learned that doubling it up is too much, and you can't really see the underbody or any of the flash. And so I'm just going to go ahead and trim this as close to the stem as I can, and leaving it in the tool in this clip. And I'm going to leave it so it's about a quarter to half an inch sticking out, and I'll go ahead and shove it into my dubbing loop, keeping tension now that it's in there. And while having tension, I'll go ahead and spread those fibers out without pulling them out of it, but just use sometimes I got to use two hands to get in there and separate a good clump, because you want it to be even. If you have a clump, it's just going to not show the underbody, and could show, create less movement. But I'll start spinning this up. I give it about 72 twirls, and after 72, has to be 72, I'll brush it. It needs that 72 counter or clockwise rotation with 9 brush strokes across each fiber, and you can see that looks pretty good. And then I give it another 17 little twist, and that's it. As I start counter ribbing it, I'm going to preen those fibers back, leaving about an 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch between each wrap, so that some of that you can see right there, it's almost borderline perfect, and as I get up towards the head, I'm going to make sure that I do a full rotation around the head, kind of creating a head, and I'll go ahead and tie that off with a behind wrap. And I'm reaching around my camera, so I'll do another one, let it hang, switch hands, and it's secure. So I'll pull most of those fibers back and now really crank down with some good securing wraps. I'll snip out the remainder of my dub loop, and I measured almost perfect there on a feather to dub loop ratio, and that looks pretty good. You can see the ice dub shining through. I'm going to go ahead and brush it out, making sure I didn't get any trap fibers. I doubt that, but just kind of see how it looks. It's got a good density. It's going to flow, look very leechy. And let's do a few more securing wraps, and we'll go ahead and finish this off. I'm going to use my brown Sharpie again, color my thread. I don't need a white hot spot, but I'll just go ahead and do a whip finish, and let's do 2. Yeah, I'm gonna do 2. I usually do 2 unless it's on something smaller, but I just want to make sure this is good to go, and that looks good. I'll snip out my thread, and I'm going to put a little bit of securing resin to seep in there. This is flow, and let it sit for just a minute and cure it up, and you're done. So thanks guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and tie some up and fish them.